Hi, everybody, and you got John Gentile here, and you are with Combat Coffee and Sometimes Wine. And the manager and editor of my podcast, our podcast, is my wife, Nicole Gentile. Today, what we're going to do first, before we get going, we got a quick sponsorship. This is sponsored by the film Wristlock. Wristlock is available now on Amazon, Apple TV, Google Play, Microsoft Store, and other streaming platforms. You can look further at that movie by going to Lightning Digital Entertainment, a Jason Harney film, and let us know what you think if you actually happen to watch it. We'll put the link below. Now, today, we have a great podcast set up. We're going to get right to it. Somebody that I've known for since the early 90s. He is I would have to say an icon in martial arts. He's been around doing martial arts over 50 years. And in one of the systems that that perpetuated my training and my self-defense and things I did in policing was a system that he has gravitated toward for pretty much his whole life. We're going to hear from him. He's with me today. This is Mel Hebert out of Grass Valley, California. Mel, thanks for joining us at the Combat Coffee and Sometimes Wine podcast. Mel, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the audience that may not really know much about you? And how you met Mr. Rossi, by the way, Grandmaster Rossi. I know he was one of your top instructors, so let's go with that route right there.
Probably the top instructor because I spent so many years with him. I met him after at age 18. I boxed for 4 years, and let me tell you that a friend of mine was going to Vietnam, and he returned safely, which is a good thing. But we ended up going across the state line into New York because drinking age then was 18 and 21 in Connecticut. Ended up at a friend of mine's house, and two guys, both named Bob. One was a 4-letter man, and you name it, football, baseball, everything. And the other guy was a short, stocky Italian. The 4-letter man, Bob, was a red belt in Tang Soo Do. His next belt was black. And then he and Bob started talking martial arts. Bob Scapino, who got me involved in it, started talking martial arts. Well, and after about 20 minutes, Bob Scapino honestly owned this guy. Every time he moved, he had him on the ground. He had him thrown him all over the place, redirected him in places he did not want to go. I walked up to Bob Scapino and I said, "You didn't tell me you were a martial arts instructor. Where's your school?" He looks at me and he goes, "I'm not an instructor. I've been going 6 months." He says, "You need to meet Joe Rossi." So we was on a Friday night, we were there. I said, "So when's the next class?" He said, "Sunday morning, 10 a.m. So I picked Bob up and walked into the school. Mr. Rossi proceeded to beat the living heck out of me. And the rest is history.
Okay, so we got a lot of people watch this, and I do obviously some colleague training myself and some other stuff besides the Filipino Kung Tao that you learned. To someone who doesn't know much about Kung Tao, how does it differ from other martial arts in general? And is it related to other arts, very similar, or other systems?
As far as relation, every art has, you only move so many moves no matter what art you're training. And that's basically it. But what this does is has a lot of very, very effective entries. We either, by the violence your opponent shows you, he approaches you, your entry is shorter and faster. If he doesn't do that and you proceed on your entry, you in turn can take him down, hit him with a barrage of elbows, knees, headbutts, fists, and feet.
So it sounds like it's a good, well-rounded self-defense system.
Oh, it's excellent. It's excellent. And I've been testing that system, John, for since I started, meaning I'm going against other arts. I didn't walk in with a cocky attitude, but I go in there and I go against other arts to see what Filipino Kung Tao brought to the table.
Okay. And one thing I know about you, Mel, because I met you back in, it's got to be 93, 94. We were doing stuff together and we were doing some promotion stuff. Mm-hmm. I remember back in the day, it wasn't just about Kung Tao, but you did a lot of research. You trained with Wally J, Small Circle Jiu-Jitsu, and I know you have stories about that. Guru Dan, you've done Filipino martial arts as far as Kali, and you've done Silat. And you also had Mike Swain as a guest in your club in Salt Lake City back in the day, doing a judo and Newaza type seminar, some groundwork. So what have you gotten from training with all these people? I know you train with Larry Hartzell as well. So you're a very well-rounded man.
Yeah. What I got was when I met Mike Swain, a friend of mine was in the shipping. I owned a trucking company, and he says, I want to introduce you to then three-time Olympian, judo Olympian Mike Swain on the phone. He needs to ship some product. So I in turn took care of him, met him 2 months later after, about 6 months after he just got done winning the 1987 World Judo Championships. So, and I walked in and I did a lot of randori with him in judo, which we don't do a lot of. Most of our judo's off a punch, a kick, an attack. So honestly, he was mopping the floor with me because I was in his realm. But while he had me airborne, I'm thinking, how can I work Filipino Kung Tao into this so he can't throw me as much? 4-hour workout, dripping in sweat, and I actually did it before the end of the workout. He looked at me, I was dripping in sweat, but he was limping down the stairs, and he goes, what are you doing next Thursday? I said, I think I'm working out with you. So it was a friendship made on the very first time we met on the mat.
Well, it was a great seminar. I remember back in the 90s, of course, there was a lot of rush to, everybody wanted to do more grappling, and he was dynamic to say the least.
Unbelievable to say the least.
What a great seminar that one was. And of course you were nice enough to attend some of the Kali seminars we had down here. So again, very well-rounded person. What about how Kung Tao and Silat, you had talked to me about, I know we've had this talk before, Masters on the Mountain, you guys had a gathering up there. Yeah. And Uncle Bill, you had done some training with Uncle Bill as well.
Yeah, Willem Dasaris is his name. We call him Uncle Bill. That's what he wants to be called. He does Indonesian Kung Tao Silat. He's probably the #1 guy on the planet. And he's got some excellent black belts. So the thing with the Silat end of it, they do a lot of low line crouches and kicks for sweeps. They're very good. They're very good. And I go twice a year, October and March. And I did that for 8 years. So they in turn, after the first year, invited me to teach. And I said, wow, they usually don't invite anybody to teach until you go 2 to 3 years. So Uncle Bill liked some of the blade work Mr. Rossi taught us. So he invited me to show some blades. The second lesson that we met, second weekend.
Does that group still meet? Does that group up
it meets, but because of the 2020-2021 debacle, it kind of put a squelch on it. So Uncle Bill doesn't come to California anymore, but he's in Denver. So I plan on traveling to Denver end of March, beginning of April this year.
Okay, that brings me to my next question, and I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but
no, interrupt.
There was something I had heard, and you'll fill me in on it. I think this kind of probably dovetails with a few things. Being that I, was a retired police sergeant, I shoot regularly at the range, and I believe you were telling me something about this Girls with Guns or Ladies with Guns group up in your area up there in Grass Valley.
Oh yeah, it's called A Girl and a Gun. And I did a demo way back when, and they immediately approached me right after the demo. And Karen Coast, the one that runs Northern California, she comes with her group every Thursday for 2 hours. And this is week number 6 is next Thursday. So then they're going to see who's going to sign up for my regular classes, which are getting bigger and bigger. So they love it because they know if they can't get to their weapon right away, they need some kind of combatives training, which Filipino Kung Tao falls right into, and take care of their assailant and then draw the weapon on them. And I don't know of any assailant that ever said, hey, is that gun loaded? When you're pointing it at, because you might not answer them verbally. So they're really a good group, and they got a group right there in Henderson, Nevada, in the same town you are, John.
Okay, well, that's good. And I think we were, this is kind of going around in a circle, but we kind of skipped it a little bit. I knew you had some stories about Wally J. And of course, everybody knows him because if you have fingers that are still healthy, that's a good thing with the professor when he was around, because he would always put you in like locks.
Oh
What
my.
was your experience with the professor Wally J with small circle jujitsu and
Right, yeah.
some of the stuff he was doing?
He called me Good Humor Man from Connecticut because I was always cracking jokes. So I did 5 seminars with him. The very first seminar, I went with Mike Schwain at the San Jose State Judo Room, which is about the size of a high school gymnasium. It is gigantic. So I get there and Wally J calls for someone that can throw a good sidekick. So a guy that knew karate got up there, threw a sidekick. Wally J put him in an ankle lock, a toe hold. He hit the mat so hard, not knowing how to fall because he was a karate practitioner, it knocked all the wind out. Well, they dragged him off the mat, and then he looked around and he says, does anyone know how to throw a good sidekick and know how to fall? So I'm standing there. All of a sudden, I didn't see Mike. He's behind me. Mike Schwain pushed me, and it took me 7 or 8 steps to catch my balance. Now I'm 6 feet from Wally J, and he goes, oh, good, we have a volunteer. So I threw a sidekick. He put a toe hold on me, and I break fall. Of course, I hit the deck. He broke my toe, my second toe on my foot. So I showed everybody what to do. I didn't complain. I hopped over to Mike Schwain, and I go, he broke my toe. He goes, oh, we'll tape it to the other toe. That was at the very beginning of the seminar, and we went for 5 hours. Every seminar I went there and I told Wally J, you broke my toe. I didn't break your toe. So
That
it was
is,
kind of a standing joke, but I
Yeah.
didn't sue the guy, and
Yeah.
it's still healing. So.
well, that's definitely some old school, old school training, right?
Man, I couldn't get that toe out of there. It was like he had a pair of pliers on,
Hey, what Mr. Rossi's favorite saying was, right? He signed the waiver.
Oh yeah, he signed a waiver. Make him sign it twice.
The guy would limp off the mats, right? He would say, "Yeah, he signed the waiver. He signed the waiver. What do you want?" Okay, let's. We got to move because we don't have that much time, but we can always do a part 2 down the road.
Sure.
One of the things you did a couple of years back is you had a book, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, but let's show the book and give a brief story on the book.
It's called Simple Obtainable Solutions. And it says, a constitutional plan to restore or govern individual freedoms and liberties now and into the future. So what I did was I based it on the anti-commandeering doctrine, which goes hand in hand with the 10th Amendment. If you're not aware of the 10th Amendment, basically, I got it memorized. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. We all see what's going on in 2022. My book chose the people. That's what I did.
All right. Well, thank you for that. I'm glad we got that little plug in, and at the end, we'll talk about that. We're kind of finishing up here. We have a lot of Koontao people on the East Coast and some in other parts of California. And of course, Las Vegas is a big area for Koontao. Is there anything that you could tell any one of them about you and Mr. Rossi that you'd like to share that's very short but to the point?
Well, again, we only had 4 full-time students, and then it got to 6, 10, 25. Took a while because he was so brutal in his teaching. I did take private lessons from him on edge weapons, which he's exceptional at. So I took private lessons before our regular lessons, and that was another story. Everybody goes, hey, how many times did you win? I said 599 to 1 out of 600 fights I had. And they go, wow, that's good. I said, no, Joe Rossi, 599, Mel won. And that's because he slipped off the mat and I attacked and cut the hell out of him. So he was that good. And again, John, you know that because you trained with him for a number of years yourself. So.
Well, there was a lot of predicaments that he would always find a way to get out of. That's for sure.
Unbelievable. Right? This guy had so many things. You go, okay, I'm going to stump him this time. No, you're not. You're looking at the ceiling.
Well, that's why we chose to use him in a little clip portion in wrist lock. Because even though we were talking about policing, we wanted to showcase a little bit of, my background, but we put him in it because he was comedic and he could do the simplest little things and create pain or a distract to get out of a situation. So good stuff, Mel. Good stuff. Okay, Mel, let's talk about if someone's interested in taking lessons from you, privates or group classes, how can they get a hold of Mel Hebert in Grass Valley, California?
Well, you can, my email is pretty easy. It's Mel at streetfightsurvival.com. My phone number, I'll just give it to you quick, 530-273-6666. Best way is Mel at streetfightsurvival.com. I'll get back to you right away. And what I usually do is I throw in 2 weeks free, not even one lesson. Give you 2 weeks just to get an idea of, do you want to continue with this fantastic art or don't you? So that's what I've done with every one of my students, and they love the idea of 2 weeks.
And I think you were telling me something about how you warm them up before they even get a lesson, which is, I think you do some bag work or something with the, with the guys and ladies.
Yeah, I boxed for 4 years before I met Mr. Rossi. That's why Mr. Rossi and I got along so well, because Mr. Rossi was a boxer too. So boxers aren't afraid of the Kuntao range because we're used to it. So I warm them up 2 3-minute rounds on a 100-pound bag and an 85-pound bag with hand wraps and bag gloves. And that's how we start the warm up.
Good stuff, Mel. Now, if somebody wants to order your book, how would they go about that? I know you're switching platforms, but how would they contact you about your book if they're interested?
Yeah, you can contact me again through the email, Mel at streetfightsurvival.com. And it will be on another platform similar to Facebook, but it's called Gab, G-A-B as in boy, gab.com. And be on Gab Books by Monday. So this way you can look on Gab Books and order it that way too.
All right. All right, Mel, we're going to close it up. If anybody's interested in hearing more about Mel in the future, we can always do a part 2, but we want to try to keep these relatively short so you can get some good information on our podcast, which of course is Combat, Coffee, and Sometimes Wine, because that's the way life goes, right? You should have a balance. So this is our balance. So Mel, we'll talk to you next time. Thank you for taking part and giving us your permission to use you in the video and your audio. Have a great day, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.